Good evening, I'm Sensei Mui, also called Venerable Acharya Mui and Shaku Mui Shinshi. That is, we explain those names and how Buddhists have a multitude of names and titles as they go through training and lineages. So I won't bore you with those details again. I'll bore you with something else. The inclination towards a life based on depth rather than on the surface activity of events is a fundamental cause for the development of parami, perfections, potentials that we can firm up into guiding intentions. Potentials such as generosity, virtues, and renunciation are deeply supportive faculties. They make us clear about our own value and intelligence. And as we develop these, they become a kind of temple, a sanctuary within which we can stand, look around, and formulate a path for practice. And the Buddha once described the way of that practice as being for my welfare, for the welfare of others, and leading to nibbana, peace. Whatever we do, whatever views or aims we hold, if we examine them under the light of these criteria, our actions will generate parami and spread them into blessings for others. Okay, that is a really nice, neat, and fancy way, very poetic, of saying we're changing our karma. All this is about karma, guiding intentions. Right there, the word intention, that has to do with karma. You've probably heard that word before as karma. The difference between the Sanskrit karma, which is used in Mahayana Buddhism, and kama, which is used in the original Buddhism, the original Nikayas, is that kama is surgically precise. Karma, not so much. Karma is originally a Hindu Vedic word, and it carries with it a lot of baggage about reincarnation and the idea that no matter what is happening to us in our lives today, it is happening because of the stuff we did in previous lives. Well, there is stuff in the Pali Canon, the Nikayas, which kind of imply that, but it's never directly said. Karma, as the Buddha used it, was more of a psychological term. In the sense of karma, the Mahayana sense, in the Vedic sense, if somebody comes up and hits you with a baseball bat, that's because you hit them with a baseball bat in a previous life and now they're getting revenge. In the Pali sense of the word, the original Buddhist expression, if somebody comes up and hits you in the head with a baseball bat, it's because they're not a nice person. It has nothing to do with you per se. You're just a target. Karma comes in what you do after you've been hit in the head with a baseball bat. It has to do what are your intentions after that. The Buddha at one point in one of the suttas says, not everything's a result of karma. Sometimes bad stuff happens. That's why we call it dukkha, bad stuff. Sometimes it just happens. It doesn't matter whether you were a good person or a bad person in a previous lifetime. And what does it matter what you were in a previous lifetime? You're not dealing with the past. You can't deal with the past. You can only deal with the present, this moment. So what you do in this moment, whatever intentions arise in this moment, that's what you're working with. So the idea that if you walk out on the street and you're crossing the street in a crosswalk, you don't see any cars coming, you walk through, but somebody comes through, speeding by and hits you with their car, that's not the result of your past karma. That's the result of a lousy driver. Your karma is how you feel about it, what you do about it after the incident has occurred. Fair enough? By the way, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to type them in at any time. And since I'm the person here speaking, I will choose either to answer it at that point, answer it at a later time, or completely ignore you. I have my choice. Buddhism is not a democracy. It is definitely a dictatorship. Okay. The two realities, there are two expressions of reality taught in Buddhism. One of them is the provisional or conditioned version. Tibetans love this word provisional. And provisional, providing this happens, that exists, or that happens. Contemporary Buddhist scholars like the word conditioned because it means everything is conditioned by what has come before, which makes for a really interesting discussion on what actually does and does not constitute a condition for an event. Anyway, this provisional or conditioned reality is experienced in daily life, everyday life. If I park in a parking spot and do not put pennies, or I guess you can't put pennies in a meter anymore, quarters or a credit card in the meter, and I get a ticket, that ticket was caused by me not paying my parking meter. My anguish following that, because now I have to explain to somebody why I got a parking ticket and why we're not buying pizza that night, is a condition. The cause is the physical event. The condition is the way I interpret it. Causes and conditions. And it has a lot to do with this word, materiality, stuff, things. Things I can buy, things I can wear, things I can crave. And the interesting thing in the Buddhist world is that materiality has to do with 6 senses. Count them, 6. Sight, hearing, taste, tactile sensation, the touching. What am I missing? Smell, and thinking. The mind was considered to be a sense organ. And which is interesting because Aristotle said the same thing at about the same time. He listed 6 senses. And then when the Catholic Church got into power, they reduced it to 5. And at that time, Europe lost its mind as far as the sense is concerned. Or maybe more. And it encompasses all of the conditioned things that we experience. We talked about this last week. Form, feeling, perception or pattern recognition, intention, karma, and consciousness, the 6 senses. All this has to do with provisional reality. And then the second reality is transcendent or unconditioned reality. And this is experienced primarily in meditation. Meditation, because while we're involved in the world and actually going through this process of exploring materiality and being swept in by these 5 clinging aggregates, our mind's kind of busy, and it's not going to slow down, and it's not going to be able to experience the transcendental reality. Transcendent reality is unconditioned. Yeah, unconditioned. That means that it is reality not only just as it appears on our level of seeing, smelling, hearing, thinking, but it goes beyond that. There's a oneness to it, which is very hard to see when you're involved in all the stuff and things that we're normally involved in day-to-day living. In other words, it goes beyond thingness. Going beyond thingness brings up the whole specter of emptiness. There was a book written by a fellow named Jean-Paul Sartre back in the 40s or 50s of the last century, and it was called Being and Nothingness. French, like Pali, is filled with lousy translation. The title of the book was actually Being and No Thingness. And that began something called existential philosophy. And it was maybe intentionally, maybe not so much, he was referring back to the same idea of going beyond a thing, going past the thing, seeing where it came from and what it's involved in. This idea of no thingness means that, well, let's take an example. I'm walking down the street and I see this great tree. It's all gnarled and it's got beautiful big leaves on it and nuts, maybe some flowers. It looks really, really cool. When I'm seeing it in this conditioned, provisional reality, all I'm really concerned with is the tree. That's where my experience stops. In the unconditioned reality, my experience doesn't stop there. Experience becomes a much broader thing, a much broader event. It becomes a process where not only is the tree involved and I involved, but I cannot separate my experience from the tree. And by the way, the tree cannot exist without the earth beneath it, or the sky above it, or the leaves that are on it. The background becomes involved. The traffic noise becomes involved. The climate, the weather, whether it rained or not. All this stuff becomes involved in that experience. So the difference is, in provisional reality, I'm concerned with a sentient being, usually me. On account of being a human being, I'm kind of selfish that way. In the transcendent and unconditional reality, it's about being sentient. Sentient being, being sentient. The experience and the experiencer are one. You hear this all the time in Zen. I used to work as a gardener many, many years ago. Thank God. And people used to yell at me because they knew I was a Zen monk. They would scream at me, "Be one with the bush, be one with the bush." Well, yeah, in this kind of experience, you are one with the bush because you and the bush are inseparable at that time. You drop the ego, you stop labeling self this and that, and suddenly there's only one, and that one is the experience that you're having. You can't experience something and then separate yourself from it as if you weren't there. And of this reality, there are three manifestations. The lowest reality is that day-to-day provisional, conventional reality. It's a mundane experience, it's conditioned, and it's filled with papanchas. I hope you remember that word from last week. That's the Italian dinner with the Parmesan. The proliferation of thought. We tend not to be able to stop our thinking process. We start cognition processes, and we act as if the thoughts were real, like they had validity and some sort of reality, all by themselves. I think that tree that I was just talking about was beautiful. Somebody else might think it's an eyesore. That somebody else might think it's a parking hazard. Somebody else might think it's blocking their view. Therefore, it's not a good tree. My vision of reality here is totally shaped by my papanchas, totally shaped by how I am having this experience. It is not real per se. It is reality, but it's not real. Tibetans have a really neat expression for that. It's real, but it's not valid. Because reality, you ever hear that term objectiveness? Be objective, see things objectively, that there is like an objective reality or truth somewhere. Well, as long as you're in a body bag or a skin bag, everything is subjective. There is no objective reality. My reality is personal, unique, and belongs to me only. Just as yours does. Yours is unique. Yours is very personal. At the time that you're having an experience, it's absolutely real. Then you stop having that experience, another experience comes up, and suddenly that first experience isn't real anymore. It's now a memory. Like it never really happened. But I can recreate it in my mind. And every time I recreate it, it changes depending on my mood and intent. It's like when I was a little kid, a friend of mine and I were in his mother's kitchen and we ate all the cookies she had made for treats that night for the rest of the family. And if you saw me standing up, you would notice that I really like food. Love food, especially sweets. Anyway, we ate all the cookies. Mother came in and, well, she scolded us for it. Later on, when we told the story, and I had to tell the story to my mother, it was all the other kids' fault. I was there, but I didn't eat any of the cookies. As a matter of fact, I tried to talk them out of it. Well, that was a lie. But I had convinced myself something like that might have happened. About a week later, my mother was making fun of me in front of one of her friends about that incident. And the way I recalled the story at that time, I wasn't even in the room. My friend had told me that's what he was going to do, and he went ahead and did it, and I stayed outside. As time went on, that incident never even happened. And our memory plays tricks on us like that. I once was talking to a guy I knew in Vietnam. And when we were talking, the incident he remembered that we were involved in was not the incident I remembered that we were involved in. As a matter of fact, I remember his story as happening on 3 different dates in 3 different places. Yet in his mind, it all happened in the same place. For him, this was reality. He would have sworn to it in a court of law. For me, I'm not so sure. But I know my memory lies. The older I get, the more it fibs. Then in the old days, in original Buddhism, there was something called the highest truth. Today, we call it the higher truth. And that is the as it is-ness. Without judgment, without bias. The Buddha referred to it as appropriate attention. Today we call it bare attention. We just note without making a judgment about it. We see things. A great example of how these two realities work together. I was once working at a store, and I was the key account manager, and I had to deal with the phone and enter stuff and do all that good thing. And across the hall from me was the boss. The boss was the owner's daughter. The owner was sick, he was dying, and he didn't get involved in the business anymore. At the same time, she was having a baby, she hadn't been married that long, business was suffering. So she was in her office with her door open, with her head down in her arm like this, and not moving. And she was like that for about an hour, and everybody that walked by went, "Oh, the poor girl, she's suffering so much. Look at that. There must be something wrong with the baby, or maybe her and her husband had an argument. No, her father yelled at her again. Oh, the business is going broke. We're all going to be out of a job next week." So within an hour, we were all looking for work. We're all calling up people, "You got a job?" I had to get a piece of paper signed. I got up, I walked into her office, and I said, "Are you okay?" And she looked up, her eyes all blurry and bloodshot, and she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I fell asleep." Okay, the girl had fallen asleep. We had seen her with her head down. We made up all these stories to explain the experience we were having. Within an hour, the store was closed. She'd lost the baby, got a divorce. Her father disowned her, and we were all looking for new work. Just because we made up stories about what we thought we saw. There it is, papanchas. And it happens all the time. Any little stimulation will cause this to start happening. Once that starts happening, it's very difficult to stop. We have to slip into this reality and see things as they are, without adding to them, without subtracting from them. Because once we subtract from them, it becomes abstract. Once we add to them, it becomes a fiction. Then beyond that is this highest reality, a reality without thought whatsoever, only experience. And that brings us into the world of non-duality, which is very, very big in Mahayana Buddhism. It's the idea that everything is dependent upon everything else. Nothing exists in a vacuum. This brings us very briefly, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because I know it fits into the 10 perfections. I'm not sure how valuable it is as far as the practice itself is concerned, but in some forms of Mahayana Buddhism, this Trikaya notion is very, very important. The 3 bodies. And originally, the way it was taught, it referred to the Buddha bodies within the Mahayana movement. It was an expression of these same 3 different levels of reality that we were just talked about. But what they had done was personified it, added a body to it, a person that we could look at. And in the material world, it was called a Nirmanakaya. A Buddha in this physical world lives in something called the Nirmanakaya. When he transforms from a Bodhisattva into a Buddha, he slips into the Sambhogakaya realm, the particulate reality, which is sort of a little bit like quantum reality. And then when he becomes fully enlightened, dies and goes off into the Parinibbana, he slips into the Dharmakaya realm of transcendent reality. Doesn't that sound pretty familiar? I think we just talked about that, did we not? But now we have these fancy words that go along with it. Now, in the earliest form of Buddhism, there was only the Rupakaya and Dhammakaya. And everybody lived here in the Rupakaya, which means material body. Ta-da! Material body. It's right there. We live in this material world. Rupa meaning form. So it's a form body, basically, is what that Rupakaya means. It's also called, by people that are not too crazy about living in the Rupakaya, it's called the mud world, because it's earth and water. It's the world of ordinary people, of ordinary minds. Well, at one point then comes, after the Buddha's death, we get this theory of the 3 realms, and then just about 100 years ago, they threw in another realm somewhere. This realm that is inconceivable, so incomprehensible, it encompasses all these higher states, but being inconceivable and incomprehensible, we really can't explain it, so why even bother talking about it? But that's what happens in Buddhism. We just love to put words into the Buddha's mouth and invent stuff. The Rupakaya, the literal translation is form body. It's the physical body in the physical realm, and all Manishu live here. Manishu being where we get the word man, and it literally means mankind. And this includes the human Buddhas, past, present, and future. This is really the world in which we're living. This is where we're working. It's also called the Saha world, which means the candy store world. It's called the candy store world because there's so much stuff going on in it that we just keep grabbing at stuff. We just can't get enough. Oh, that's glittering. That looks nice. Let's have some of that. Maybe I can find something and take it home with me. There's just so much to deal with that we often feel overwhelmed by all the choices we have. We have literally too much choice. And one of the things of Buddhism is to get rid of the choices. The fewer choices, the happier you're going to be. The more you can make better choices because you don't have so much influence from the unimportant stuff. The experience of Rupa Kaya is also called samsara. Now, this is an expression of the psychological effects of living in a saha world. Samsara literally means the wandering. When we wander through 6 realms, heaven being the highest and hell being the lowest, and humans and titans and animals and hungry ghosts and everything, and we're constantly wandering through this world. And basically what the psychology behind this is sometimes this materialism of the earth, we're really happy with it, we feel great, we feel like we've conquered the world, and everything is everything. But then we lose what it was that we fell in love with and brought home and asked Mom if we could keep it. And the next thing that happens, we're depressed. We slide down the tubes and into depression. We become angry. And sometimes we become addicted. We become addicted to certain TV shows, certain video games, certain games on the iPhone. We become addicted to chocolate, tobacco, alcohol, drugs, sexual experiences, relationships. We can become addicted to anything. And that's what the samsaric life is all about. Our addictions to the things in the saha world. So there's really a direct correlation between these two things. The candy store and samsara. It's like somebody needing a sugar fix all the time. That's Rupakaya. Nirmanakaya, the emanation body of the Dharmakaya in the physical world. And that is, a Buddha that's alive and well, walking around. He's originally referred to as the physical body of Buddha, the physical body of enlightenment itself. Remember, in Mahayana, who develops these ideas, Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, is never as important as the idea of Buddha itself, that is, enlightenment, awakening. Well, the physical Buddha is, of course, subject to birth, sickness, aging, death, sometimes frustration. And this is an interesting thing that it's one of those, what Al Gore call it, inconvenient truth, that at one point, Sariputra, his star wisdom disciple, asks him about suffering. How does dukkha arise? Is it because, and he gives an explanation, and Buddha says, no, it's not like that. Anyways, the Sariputra gives 4 or 5 or 6 different explanations. Well, how does suffering arise? And Buddha always answers, don't say it like that. You know better. Well, finally, Sariputra gets so upset, so frustrated. He's shouting at the Buddha, well, don't you see suffering? And the Buddha responds, not only do I see suffering, I feel it too. And this was just before his death. So as long as you're living in a body bag, there's going to be suffering. Can't get away from it. Stress will always be with us. And this is one of the reasons why in Mahayana they focused more on Buddha all by itself and dropped the word the. Because he was a little more too human than what they really wanted to see. Now, psychologically, what this Nirmanakaya business means is that bodhicitta, the awakening mind has been activated. There is a desire to become enlightened. And this usually refers to somebody who's actually practicing the Dharma. A practitioner doesn't have to be a Buddhist. He just has to be practicing the Dharma as he or she understands it. Got to be politically correct here. Then comes the Sambhogakaya, literally the bliss body. It's a transformational state, and it represents the Buddha in meditation. Now this is interesting because what they seem to be describing here is the jhana state of meditation, which is the state that the Buddha recommended for his disciples to practice, this jhana type of meditation. Today that's best known as, under the word Zen. What a subtle body of limitless form as a result of jhana meditation, it exposes the luminous mind, pahasara citta, which is the mind without thought. We call it, in Japanese trends, it's called Hongaku, the original mind, or the original enlightenment. And just happens to be the name of my lineage. The luminous form of clear light. In Tibet, that's called Dzogchen, clear light. And it can be obtained during the perfection practice, but it can only be directly experienced in meditation, which is kind of an interesting phenomena. The two cannot be separated. Dharmakaya, the ineffable, that is inexplicable nature of the teachings itself. We can hint at it, but we can't see it, except, of course, in Vajrayana, when they practice Vairochana and Samantabhadra type meditations and tantras. Vairochana representing emptiness, Samantabhadra, the great worthy Bodhisattva. In other words, what they're saying is, you can't get there from here. You have to be at a special level of meditational insight to understand reality as it is, whether it's Dharmakaya or as Dhammakaya. The characteristics of this state of mind are great purity, great realization, and great mind. Now this new one that they just introduced about 100 years ago, Svabhavikaya, is kind of interesting. I kind of threw this in here and mentioned it only because it's defined as a self-originated body. Oh, I need a quotation mark. I dropped it. I'm sorry. Self-originated body. According to the Buddha, this is impossible. Nothing self-originates. Everything is caused and conditioned. Now, nibbana, and maybe that's what they're referring to as nibbana, this higher state of transformation containing all other bodies beyond all comprehension, is exactly the same description the Buddha gave nibbana, or nirvana, as we call it. And it is indestructible reality because it is unconditioned. It is not self-originating, it just is what it is, to use an old worn-out phrase. Finally, we have these two ideas, and these are the most important philosophical ideas ever to come out of the Buddha. No self and emptiness. And the Buddha really was concerned with this anatta idea, or anatman in Sanskrit. It means no soul or no self. See, in the Buddha's view, the self is an illusion. It's not real. It is something that manifests periodically, simply dependent upon causes and conditions that arise. The self that we experience at any given moment is stimulated. It doesn't exist without stimulation of some kind. The belief in an autonomous, self-existent being of any kind is viewed as a fetter and should be abandoned. This is a self. It should be abandoned. The next term is shunyata. It's pronounced the same in both Pali and Sanskrit, just spelled a little differently. And in one of the sutras, or suttas, it is really interesting. He says, "It is said that the world is empty. The world is empty, Lord. In what respect is it said that the world is empty?" And the Buddha replies, there's that quotation mark I missed on the other slide. I got to show you this one. There it is. I missed it. I dropped it and put it over here. The Buddha replied, "Insofar as it is empty of a self or anything that pertains to a self. Thus it is said, Ananda, the world is empty." And this is what is meant by shunyata. Anatta says, I am devoid of an autonomous self-existent self. Shunyata says, everything else is also devoid of a self-existent self. And the greatest cause and condition of the person that arises and appears as an ego, whether it's Mui or Claire or who else is here, Larry or Mary or Meredith or Charlotta, they all appear as a self because their karma overwhelms them. The karma picks out a stimulus or a group of stimuli and creates an ego around that stimuli because it either craves what it's experiencing or rejects what it's experiencing. Now this brings us back to the 10 perfections. If we practice these 10 perfections, we will divest ourselves of the idea of a self. And we will see these 3 realities working quite clearly. That is the conditioned, the higher reality, and the transcendental reality. We have to because we'll be diligent enough to reach this panya parami, the transcendental wisdom and insight into the way things really are. Without that, we cannot develop equanimity or serenity. And it starts with this first paramita of generosity. This perfection begins the whole journey into the awakening mind. And it's the whole 10 perfections are merely the expression of one thing. And that one thing is compassion. The 10 perfections are an antidote for the 10 non-virtues. There are 3 of body: killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. 4 of speech: lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, and gossip. And 3 of mind: covetousness. Let's call it what it is: greed, ill will, and wrong view. When we look at these 10 non-virtues, and all of these are actually embodied in the 5 precepts that any Buddhist takes when they do their actual conversion as a Buddhist, sort of our baptism. We have to ask ourselves, what does it mean to kill? What does it mean to steal? What does sexual misconduct look like on subtler levels? Is lying ever justified and good? What about harsh speech? Do you really ever need it? What does that mean? Divisive speech, greed, ill will, wrong view. All these things have subtler meanings. We can go through our entire life without killing anybody or anything physically. But what about if I gossip about somebody and I don't know if that gossip is true or not? And even if I know it's true, why am I doing it? If I'm trying to destroy the reputation and good name, then I am killing. I am killing something. I am stealing something from them, their good name and reputation. If it's for the interesting thing about the sexual misconduct idea is that it doesn't refer just to the act. It refers to relationships in general. Sex was seen in the Buddha's day as being all about power, not just enjoyment, but also about power. What kind of power am I trying to exert? How much of a statement is a lie? If there's a little statement in there, like a husband's wife walks in and she's wearing a dress, and the dress makes her look like she's gained 45 pounds overnight. And she says, "How does this look?" He can either tell her the truth as, normally he'll say, you probably will say, "Boy, that really looks good, yeah." Or he might say, "That dress really doesn't suit you." But he might say the truth in a very harsh way. Like, "That makes you look like a horse." What we say, and I have this problem all the time, you know, it's not just unrealized people. As a human being, I have this problem. I will couch things in such a way where they are literally the truth, but they're not conveying the truth. I will say something, it just sort of falls out of my mouth without me even knowing it, something that is very hurtful to somebody else. I will recognize it after I've said it, but I should have recognized it before I said it. Divisive speech and gossip. Oh, don't we like this one? Whenever we criticize a person or talk about a person who's not there, then we're gossiping. Especially if we put the statement we're making as a fact rather than an opinion. It's okay to have opinions. Everybody's got opinions. They're generally useless, but we all have opinions. Greed. When I make this statement up here, this harsh speech and gossip, I am being very greedy. I am being greedy in the sense that I want to be heard. I don't want the other person to be heard over me. And that is a manifestation of ill will and wrong view. And we already said it kills reputation, it steals good name, and exerts inappropriate power over somebody else. So to blow one is to blow them all. And as I said, it's all about compassion. The standard teaching about how the two major schools view compassion, and again, Mahayana is not a school, it's a movement. Theravada is a school and a tradition. It is said, the Theravada Buddhist dwelling in karuna, which is the Pali word for compassion, see compassion as a means for attaining a happy present life and a heavenly rebirth. The Mahayana Buddhist, on the other hand, of course this came from a Mahayana textbook, compassion is a co-requisite for becoming a bodhisattva. See, this is a much higher attainment than just being happy in this present life. And a Mahayana scripture, I wish I knew which one it was. I pulled this out of another book. Compassion is that which makes the heart of the good move at the pain of others. It crushes and destroys the pain of others. Thus it is called compassion. It is called compassion because it shelters and embraces the distress. Wow. There is so much wrong with the stuff in this slide, it's hard to know where to begin. And it is a standard teaching. You can get it at any Buddhist center you want, except Theravadan Buddhist centers, which have a different approach. First of all, yes, the Theravadins do teach this. The dwelling in Karuna is a means for attaining a happy present life and heavenly rebirth. But that's not all they teach. They also teach that compassion is a co-requisite for becoming a bodhisattva. You can't become a Buddha without compassion. You cannot become an arhat without compassion. You can't even enter the stream into enlightenment without compassion. That has always been the teaching. And in Mahayana, it is taught that yes, karuna is a co-requisite for becoming a bodhisattva, but one of its side effects is that it is necessary for living a happy present life and heavenly rebirth. So, it's like, again, is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? And this definition of compassion kind of falls short. Yes, it seeks to crush and destroy the pain of others. It doesn't actually do it. And thus it is called compassion. Well, no. Compassion doesn't mean crushing and destroying the pains of others. The word compassion was originally used as a synonym for turning away. The word itself means car, to carry, comes into our language as carriage or car, automobile, to carry, and una, one, can mean one who carries, or to carry all as one. Can mean either one of those. The expression karuna was used to mean turning away from something. Turning away from what? Turning away from focusing on my problems so I can focus on the problems of others. If I'm focused on your problems, your needs, your wants, your desires, then I'm not thinking about my problems, my wants, my needs, and my desires. That gives me a happier life because I'm not preoccupied with the nonsense stuff and things which are happening in my life. I've switched my focus. I've turned away from that. That is how the word was originally used, and that is how the Buddha Shakyamuni used the word. And we can see the ridiculousnesses of the two views of compassion here, because the two views of compassion are really one view. Theravadins, dwelling in karuna is a means for attaining happiness in present life and heavenly rebirth. It's a co-requisite for becoming a bodhisattva. Mahayanas, karuna is a co-requisite for becoming a bodhisattva. Dwelling in karuna is a means for attaining happy present life and heavenly rebirth. The only difference is the emphasis. Theravadins interested in here and now. Mahayanas interested in then and there, the future. Compassion according to the Buddha. Here's what the Buddha says in the Kalama Sutta. He keeps pervading the first direction as well as the second direction, the third and the fourth. That means the entire world. With an awareness imbued with compassion. Thus he keeps pervading above and below and all around. Everywhere, in every respect, the all-encompassing cosmos with an awareness imbued with compassion, abundant, expansive, immeasurable, free from hostility, free from ill will. He's talking about a person who has entered into the stream of becoming an arahant or a bodhisattva. He has to be compassionate. This is from the original Pali manuscripts. Everywhere he looks, he turns away from his own stuff and nonsense and focuses on the problems, needs, wants, and desires of others. He cannot simply focus on his own. That would lead to self-absorption. If we create more conditions for self-absorption, we create a much stronger, overwhelming ego that will overwhelm any kind of a judgment. But you notice, nowhere in here does it say he's got to be wise. It is compassion which is abundant, expansive, immeasurable, free from hostility, free from ill will. It says nothing about wisdom, because wisdom is a byproduct of compassion. Can't have one without the other. In the Bodhisattva Charyavatara by Shantideva, the Bodhisattva's way of ethical conduct, it's sometimes called. He talks about how to meditate on compassion. And for those of you that are interested in Tibetan Buddhism, you'll recognize Tonglen in this immediately. The practice of exchanging self with others. Strive at first to meditate upon the sameness of yourself and others. Well, it's right there in the first sentence. In joy and sorrow, all are equal. Nobody escapes both joy and suffering. Thus, be guardian of all as of yourself. The hand and other limbs are many and distinct, but all are one. The body to be kept and guarded. Likewise, different beings in their joys and sorrows are, like me, all one in wanting happiness. This pain of mine does not afflict or cause discomfort to another's body, and yet this pain is hard for me to bear because I cling and take it for my own. And other beings' pain I do not feel, and yet because I take them for myself, their suffering is mine and therefore hard to bear. And therefore I'll dispel the pain of others, for it is simply pain, just like my own. And others I will aid and benefit, for they are living beings like my body. Since I and other beings both in wanting happiness are equal and alike, what difference is there to distinguish us? That I should strive to have my own bliss alone? Shantideva recognized the fact, as in the Dhammapada, in a chapter called The Rod, the Buddha says, all beings fear the rod. They fear death. Shantideva recognized that this is very, very true. We're all equal in that respect. None of us gets out alive. All of us experience a certain amount of joy, a certain amount of happiness, a certain amount of sorrow, a certain amount of pain. We're all equal in that fact. The suffering I experience, whatever pain I experience, does not afflict or discomfort anybody else. I feel it alone. They might sympathize, they might empathize, they might feel some pity, but they're not feeling it. We all feel it from a unique perspective. Our experiences are unique. They're similar, but only I can feel what I feel. Recognizing the fact that we all have pain, Shantideva says, we should meditate on it by imagining that we are feeling the pain of others and take on their suffering. What does it feel like to be them? President Obama recently said, you have to look through their eyes, put yourself in their place in order to understand them. And that's exactly what Shantideva is saying here. You have to understand what somebody else is going through, or at least make the attempt to simulate that feeling so you can better understand them, because they're not that different from you, no matter whether they're likable or not. This brings us finally into generosity, because what Shantideva is saying here, what the Buddha is saying here, is an expression of extraordinary generosity. I can not only be generous with the stuff I have, like money. If I had some, I'd be generous. Goods, time, but also investing our very lives into the desire to alleviate suffering from others. Compassion is not just a good idea. It is active. It has to be proactive, or else it's not compassion. Then it's just a good idea. In the lines of experience, J. Tsongkhapa, probably the most prolific writer which ever existed on this planet, a Tibetan, of course, said that generosity is the wish-granting jewel with which you can fulfill the hopes of sentient beings. The hope of most sentient beings is to avoid suffering, to experience happiness. Since happiness is the opposite of suffering, if we can alleviate suffering, then ipso facto, they will be happy. It's the best weapon for cutting the knot of miserliness. It is the altruistic conduct that enhances your self-confidence and undaunted courage. It is the basis of your good reputation, etc., etc. Knowing this, the wise have devoted themselves to the excellent path of completely giving away their body belongings and merit. And then he goes on to say that he did it. It's the beginning practice. It's the first practice to become a fully enlightened, fully authentic, real human being, actually doing something to benefit society, the community, your neighborhood, and eventually globally. And you might think because you're one person, you're just one little person out of 7.2 billion, that you really can't make a difference. Well, if you don't think small things can make a difference, go to sleep in a room that has one mosquito. That one itty-bitty little mosquito is going to make a big impact on you the first time he bites you. Small things matter. In the Madhyamaka a Mahayana work said to have been written by another genius, Nagarjuna, the first cause for perfect enlightenment, generosity, is the most important. Giving his flesh with enthusiasm infers what is not seen. What it infers is the idea of emptiness. That we are a manifestation of conditions and causes. Generosity is also a manifestation of conditions and causes. It means that we are conditioning our mind to see this not seen that is inferred by our actions. That transcendental reality that all of us are interrelated. In Pure Land Buddhism, I really like Pure Land Buddhism. It's kind of cool. It takes the best of both worlds and melds them together. There's a saying, there is only one mind and we're all sharing it. There is only one life and we're all living it. The Buddha himself said that in one of the more famous suttas, one life does not diminish. The death of one person does not diminish life. Life continues. The birth of one person does not add to life. Life is what life is. It goes on whether we're here or not. And this is one of the great secrets of the universe. Lots of secrets in the universe. This one happens to be the universe doesn't care whether you're here or not. It doesn't care whether you were born or whether you died. It has nothing invested in you. But once you're here, you make a difference. What difference you make is determined by the karma you have, by your intentions, and how you act upon them. That is the secret. The qualities of a bodhisattva or bodhisattva is to seek to cultivate generosity in between meditation periods. The most important perfection practice during the bodhisattva's post-meditation time is generosity. This is the way to awaken the mind. Now, there are three types of generosity. There's material generosity, protection from fear, and Dhammic generosity. Material generosity is easy to define. You're giving away something. You're giving away money, you're giving away canned goods to a food drive, you're working at you're volunteering at a food pantry or a soup kitchen, you're giving clothes to Goodwill. I mean, it's real easy to see generosity when it's on a material level. Generosity, as far as protection from fear is concerned, is a little more difficult. A little more difficult. I was in Southern Illinois recently. We refer to it as the 32nd hell in Buddhism. Cornfield hell. It's like GMO cornfield after GMO cornfield. People don't do anything organically down there. And you would think they would have organic food, but no. Protection from fear. Anyway, well, I was visiting some people in a suburb of St. Louis. They claim they're not a suburb, but they are. They're close enough. There's a wheat field behind the development, and they were cutting down the wheat before they plowed the place up and started building new homes. Deprived of its food, a mother skunk took its 3 baby skunks, brand new babies, just this size, fit in the palm of your hand, tiny. Took them out of the cornfield searching for food. 10 or 15 people from the neighborhood gathered together, freaking out that there were skunks there. These baby skunks scared these people because the baby skunks might skunk them. Here you had all these big, burly men terrified of baby skunks. The first thing they wanted to do was kill them. Kill a thing no bigger than your iPhone. As a Buddhist, of course, I had to try to convince them out of it. Well, they finally let the skunks in peace because nobody wanted to get close enough to get sprayed. It takes a lot of fear to want to kill a baby skunk. A lot of unreasonable thoughts have to be going through your head. It takes a lot of ill will to want to kill anything. And it takes a lot of egocentric selfishness to think you have the right to do so. So it becomes difficult to protect others from fear. Some people don't want to be protected from fear. They enjoy being afraid. The adrenaline rushes, they identify themselves as being afraid, might go out and buy a gun because that makes them feel better. They might lock their doors, they might develop conspiracy theories, but being afraid is who they are. That's their view of themselves. Now, I thought I had this one, generosity of Dhamma, licked, because I thought that meant, thought it for years, that it meant all I had to do is go out and teach the Dhamma. I could pass out Dhamma books. I could just put up a Buddhist flag somewhere and say, okay, this is my gift to you. A bunch of words. If the Dhamma were only words, and it does mean teaching, by the way, that Dharma, generosity Dharma does mean teaching, but it doesn't mean empty words of sitting here in front of a camera and talking to you. It means action, actually living the teaching as if it mattered. This is really hard to do, because unless you're a fully enlightened being, it's going to be very difficult to do that all the time because of our karma. The karma asserts itself and we become something other than the Dhamma in action. It's really interesting to find out that you have fallen off your high horse because you weren't living the Dhamma even though you're teaching it. The old expression, those who can do, those who can't teach, sometimes that's true. I'm real good at teaching, but I'm only human at practicing. And as long as I'm in a skin bag, that's the way it's going to be. On the other hand, it is impossible for us to judge accurately the practice of another. After all, we're all doing the best we can with the information and experience that we have. Nobody deliberately goes out to screw up. We all make mistakes. Let's learn from them and move on. The wisdom that one gets from age only comes from making mistakes. I have never made a mistake. I have only had learning experiences. Wish that were true. The truth of the matter is, in our practice, we are driven by karma, all of our past experiences, and once you've experienced something, you can never unexperience it. Stuff that I experienced 60 years ago still is up here somewhere in my brain, and it surfaces from time to time. There is not a straight line from what happened back then to here. It's all nice and convoluted and mixed up with other stuff. And karma is like this tidal flood that just pushes us forward. It just keeps moving us like a tsunami. Sometimes it's out of control, sometimes we can get out of the way. Very often we can't. Even when we get out of the way, we still get wet. This is one of the factors. The other factor is how we have experienced the Dhamma itself, how we have learned, how we have practiced, who has taught us, what is our understanding. We take these two things together, our understanding and our intention, And that manifests as our practice. And for each individual, it is different. One person's understanding of the Eightfold Path and how it should be practiced will be very, very different from another person's. We can't go around judging each other on how we are practicing. The only thing we can do is say, maybe you shouldn't have done it that way. I can be critical without criticizing. That would be a nice change if we could all do that. 2 types of material generosity, the outer generosity and the inner generosity. The outer generosity is easy, the inner generosity is difficult. The inner generosity has to do with giving up one's time, giving up obsessions about one's families, friendships, relationships, and it's giving of kind words. I have a question here from Meredith Bosco. Isn't it important to know what material generosity is going to cause the best good? The road to hell was paved by good intentions. That'll be coming out with a quote from Buddha. Okay. All right. Again, from this Mahayana document, ordinary individuals craving happiness cannot live without comfort. Recognizing that comfort comes from generosity, it was this, the Muni, that's Shakyamuni Buddha, spoke of first. Again, this is the first cause to enlightenment. Ordinary people crave happiness, and we love instant gratification. We want to be comfortable. But comfort comes from being generous to others. If we're being stingy and hoarding and miserly, you can't be very comfortable because we're always trying to protect what we've got. Generosity in the Bodhisattva, integrating the virtues into one's life. Okay, there's 2 points here. There is an aspiration to bodhicitta, the awakening mind, and there is the engagement in bodhicitta. The difference between the two, engagement and aspiring. Aspiring bodhicitta is like planning a trip. Engaging a bodhicitta is actually going on it. You have to be active. Buddhism is all about action, not much about theory. The 3 ethical disciplines of the Bodhisattva, refraining from negative action. A negative action is one that does not lead to happiness, does not lead to peace, and does not lead to freedom. A positive action leads to happiness, peace, and freedom. The next thing a Bodhisattva is supposed to be concerned with is accumulating virtue. That is moral strength, and then working for the welfare of other sentient beings, whether they have no legs, 2 legs, 4 legs, 6 legs, 8 tentacles, whatever. I can skip that one. Never underestimate the power of a small gift. Even if a person throws the rinsing of a bowl or a cup into a village pool or pond thinking, may whatever animals live here feed on this, that would be a source of merit. No gift is too small. No gift is worthless. What is given is not lost. So when the world is on fire with aging and death, one should salvage one's wealth by giving. What's given is well salvaged. The more we hold on to stuff, whether it's outer stuff or inner stuff, the more miserable we become. It's stuff that we have is not doing any good. It's taken out of the world. It's not giving benefit to anyone, not even us. A pot of gold isn't worth anything if it lays in the ground. Only when it's put into the economy in somebody's hands does it have any value. And it's all about conquering anger with a lack of anger, bad with good, stinginess with a gift, a liar with truth. This is how we conquer our bad habits. This is how we conquer the bad habits of others. We have to overcome our miserliness. What the miser fears, that keeps him from giving, is the very danger that comes from when he doesn't give. This reminds me of a line from the Bible, the book of Job, when Job says, "That which I feared most has come to pass." Of course, Job, because you feared it most, it was inevitable. It had to happen. Giving at the proper time. You have to give at the proper time. Giving a gift when it's not needed has no meaning. Giving something that is not wanted has no meaning. Giving something with the intention of getting something back in return has no meaning. I was once asked at a presentation years ago, a lady in the audience asked me, is it possible to be too compassionate, so compassionate that it would hurt? I said no. I thought it was a trick question. I said no, and then she wanted further explanation, especially when everybody laughed. And she gave me her story. She said she had given her daughter lots and lots of money, and she thought her daughter would take it and use it in a particular way, where her daughter used it in another way, which the daughter thought was more beneficial. That's not generosity. That's not even compassion. That is negotiation. That's asking for a contract, a bargain. How does a person of integrity give a gift? Well, there are 5 ways. You give a gift with a sense of conviction. You give a gift with attention. You give a gift in its proper time. You give a gift with a heart that is empathetic. And it doesn't adversely affect himself or others. A lot of times we can give a gift that will hurt the other person. It's probably not a good idea to give $10 to a person in active stages of alcoholism. It's probably not a good idea to give a weapon to a child. One has to want to give the gift just for the sake of giving the gift. They have to be aware that they're giving a gift and expect nothing in return. Once we expect something in return, then it's no longer a gift. It's a bargaining chip. How not to give. One should not give seeking one's own profit with a mind attached to a reward. One shouldn't expect for returns on their gift, whatever that gift is. When it should be given without looking for your own profit, being not attached to the gift. It is a way of being non-attached. A person who gives a gift not seeking their own profit, not with a mind attached to a reward, not seeking to store it up for himself, not with the thought, I'll enjoy this after death. Good trick. Instead, he gives a gift with the thought, giving is good. He gives his gift, food, drink, clothing, a vehicle, a garland, perfume, an ointment, bedding, shelter, and a lamp, to a Brahmin or a contemplative. What do you think, Sariputra, might a person give such a gift as this? Well, Sariputra says yes, but such a person would be very rare today. You do not seek for your own profit, not with the mind attached to reward, not trying to store things up for yourself. That same list that we went on, it's not generosity if you're doing it for a particular reason. That's what all of this list and what the Buddha said is trying to teach. If there is a motive behind the gift, it is not generous. Generosity begins with a thought that this is an ornament for the mind, a support for the mind to give up stinginess. And of course, the greatest gift is the Dhamma, but actually living the Dhamma, being kind, being helpful, being loving. And these are the qualities that are not Dhamma. If an action leads to passion and not dispassion, obsession, and not to dispassion. This is a code word for obsession. If it doesn't lead to being fettered, or if it leads to being fettered, not to being unfettered, if it leads to accumulating and not to shedding, if it leads to self-aggrandizement and not to modesty, if it leads to discontent and not to contentment, if it leads to entanglement, not to seclusion, if it leads to laziness and not arousal, if it leads to being burdened and not being unburdened, then you can categorically say, this is not the Dhamma, this is not the teacher's instructions. And of course, the opposite is true of what the Dhamma is. Oh, okay, that's the end of the slides. Family. Now, the answer to the question, yes, it is very important to know what material generosity is going to do the best good. And the answer to that is it has to be something that is needed at that moment. It has to be something which is not harmful to another and also not harmful to yourself. It has to be something given which will actually benefit the condition of the person. Sometimes a person might think they need one thing, but you, being outside of the situation, will see that they need something else entirely. And these are the way that these gifts are given. And that's important to understand about material gifts, that they work in that way. But also, it should lead to non-obsession, to freedom, and not to hoarding and accumulation. There's just this whole thing that we do when we give gifts that we sometimes do it to make others feel better about themselves. And maybe the gift we're giving is the wrong thing for that situation. And like that lady that I was talking about, sometimes we give gifts in the expectation of getting something back. And this is the wrong kind of gift to give. Material gifts that sustain life, that help another live in a comfortable position so they can enjoy some sort of spirituality. These are good gifts to give. Gifts that are merely trinkets or meant to aggrandize the individual, that entangle the individual in more cravings, these are not terribly good gifts. Any other questions? I see no questions. I can ramble on for another 6 minutes. Won't be hard for me. There was one thing back here I saw. It had to do with the idea of sentient beings and protecting and giving the gift of Dhamma to sentient beings. It is not so much taught in the old school of Buddhism as it is in the new school of Buddhism that all beings have the opportunity to become enlightened. And this is because the Buddha himself said, anyone with faith in the Buddha, in the Dhamma, or in the Sangha, and in the Sangha, it was a conditional, they had to be all three. One who has faith in the Buddha alone or in all three. Whether they have no legs, 2 legs, 4 legs, or more, whether they are form beings or formless beings, if they have faith, they can attain enlightenment. The Buddha was very, very strong on faith, not just wisdom. The two have to work together. The 10 perfections are faith in action. If I have an object in my hand, I have a quarter in my hand. I have faith that if I let go of this quarter, it will go down and hit the table if my hand's over the table. Watch. It did. I have faith. I have faith in that gravity works. Newtonian physics is a pretty good idea. Why do I have faith in it? Because I've witnessed it time and time again. I have experienced it. Therefore, I have faith in it. When the Buddha speaks about faith, he's talking about conviction. Conviction based upon experience. He doesn't mean blind faith. And that's why the 10 perfections are called a practice, because one has to develop faith in them. When we start out being generous in the sense of the 10 paramitas, we don't do it by giving away everything we have and cutting off our left arm to feed some hungry animal. We start out small. We give away small things, things that are not consequential to us, that aren't going to threaten our livelihood and our peace of mind. Seeing that it works, that being generous brings merit and wealth, we can continue to give. Wealth is an interesting thing because in the suttas and the teachings, it says to be generous to others brings wealth. And that's because the universe is incredibly user-friendly. If I have enough wealth that I could give it around, the universe will probably go, he's generous. Let's give him more to be generous with. If I am stingy and miserly and afraid to give everything away, that's because I'm living in a place of want. That means I don't have anything, and the universe says, yes, you're right, you don't. And of course, we're the universe. We've made that decision. Our mind is incredibly user-friendly. So it's best for us to start small and work in faith until we see that it does work. And once we're assured that it works, then we can give away lots more. Thank you. And good night, Mr. and Mrs. America.